So, Coming to America comes out on Amazon Prime today, and what did I think of it? So, my history with this, pretty much it's a franchise now, was I actually watched the first one for the first time last year when I heard about the sequel coming out. I said, okay, I better watch the original one, and then I actually rewatched it again last night because I watched like March or April of last year, so I couldn't really remember the movie. So rewatched it last night. Still holds up. It's not as funny the second time, but it still was a pretty funny movie. So I went into this movie, and pretty much since I watched it last night, and then I watched Coming to America first thing this morning, watching straight away, like seeing the big transition of the people, literally 30 years in the difference. Big takeaway, I thought the biggest standout for me was the guy who sings, the kind of guy who announces everyone when they come in the room, him. Because you start off the first movie with him, you start off the second movie with him, and just seeing the massive age gap and just see the 30 years on this character, I thought was just so mad to see that, just the space of seeing them literally within 12 hours of each other. But that thing right there, the fact that the 30-year gap in between, I actually really like that. Going into the sequel, I was a bit nervous because I was thinking comedy sequels that have like take so long don't really have a good reputation. Zoolander 2 and Dumb and Dumber 2 are sequels I kind of go to a lot when talking about these comedy sequels. So I was a bit nervous going into it, but I feel the massive time jump within these, or the time jump, yeah, within the first one and the second one, I thought lends this movie really well, because our characters feel like they are the same characters we saw in the first movie, just with 30 years of life experience thrown on top of them, which I thought worked really well. The cast are all, even the cast, it's all the same cast, and they all feel like the same cast. Eddie Murphy in particular, I thought didn't work as well in this movie, in the fact that he doesn't really feel like the main character in this movie. In the first one, of course, he is the main character, but in this movie, to me, I just felt like he wasn't really the main character, and the fact that I just thought he wasn't our main, like the main story, I didn't think was following him. I felt like the main story was following his son, whose story arc was very similar to what Eddie Murphy's character went through in the first movie. So I was quite disappointed that we didn't get as much Eddie Murphy as I was kind of anticipating, and I just thought it was more a serious role for Eddie Murphy rather than a comedic role, which you kind of would expect in this comedy sequel. But other than that, I thought the movie itself as a whole, I enjoyed the kind of, I can't remember the kid's story, but the storyline of Eddie Murphy's son, I thought was good. The fact that it literally is flipped. In the first movie, it's Eddie Murphy going to America and finding his love, where in this movie, it's the son coming from America, coming to, what did I call it, Zimbabwe, I think the country's called, I actually can't remember. But he comes over there and he has to learn their customs, so it's a bit of a role reversal. The problem though was the son comes out of nowhere. They explained it in the movie, but if you watch the first movie, there's no, like, I don't remember anything like that ever happening, even though it's not obviously not shown in the first movie, but I don't see where the story would have given for that to happen. James Earl Jones also shows up in this movie, and bloody hell, that man looks old. He's 90 years old, and I was actually surprised to see he's 90 years old, because I thought he was older in the original movie, but he's only like his late 50s back then, so I was quite surprised by that. The movie as well, you got the entire cast, you got the young girls who are kind of not allowed to follow the customs. I thought that storyline was decent. For the most part, I thought this movie, the storylines as a whole, I found them to be not as interesting with the first movie. I think the first movie just felt so fresh, so funny. Even though you do have the same characters, I just felt like they were just funnier in the original. It could be the comedy back in the 80s just worked a lot more, because the first movie is a heavily 80s movies. Just the way they look, the way they dress, the way they feel, all was really 80s. But in this movie, I felt like it didn't really have an image. It was just a Coming to America sequel, but it didn't have anything to stand out on its own by itself. I just didn't think it was able to hold itself up against that. But as a whole, with the sequel, I had fun with it. I gave it on Letterboxd 2.5 stars, where I don't have Coming to America, the first one, on Blu-ray. I have ambitions to pick that one up, but I actually can't see myself ever rewatching this movie. I feel like if I want to watch a Coming to America movie, I'm going to watch the first one, because I actually get a lot more fun, a lot more satisfaction out of the first one, where then I didn't really get as much of this one. I found myself, when I watched the first one for the very first time, I was laughing aloud a lot. But in this movie, I actually chuckled once or twice, but I never laughed out loud, which I kind of found to be a bit disappointing. You got Wesley Snipes' character as well in this movie, who he plays the he plays the villain of the movie, where the first one didn't need a villain, but in this movie they need the villain because the stories are so different. But I just felt like his villain just didn't really work with the movie. I felt like his villain was just unnecessary. I feel like if they wrote it slightly different, they wouldn't need a villain. So I think his storyline could be taken out of the movie as a whole. But the movie itself, I have fun with it. As I said, I have no ambition on going back and rewatching it, but I'm glad I have seen Coming to America. It's not my favorite movie of the year, but it's not my least favorite movie of the year. I've only seen 4 this year, which for March is just absolutely disappointing and just embarrassing. I've only seen 4 2021 movies as of right now. But if you want to see future content from me in the future, make sure you click the subscribe button to see more content in the future with me. And as always, thanks for watching.